supposedly going live to multiple platforms, and it looks like it's working. So if anyone can see me, or if anyone is catching this whenever the stream seems to start, this is the first Free Coaching Friday where I am streaming both publicly and in the private group. So let me talk about what's going on here. Every single Friday, and I have no idea if anyone can even see this, every single Friday I do free coaching in my Facebook group for people interested in cybersecurity, cybersecurity jobs, cybersecurity careers. And I do that because when I first started my YouTube channel, I was able to kind of keep up with all the questions that I got, and I was able to kind of get back to folks in ways that a lot of people to talk to all the time, which is a good thing. A lot of people to help out. But with all of that being said, let's see. I don't even know if this is working. Let me test it. Let me just see if this is working. Test. I don't even know how to tell if this is working. If I'm honest.
Oh, it's working.
What's working?
Our Facebook is working.
Is it?
Yeah, let me look on.
I have no idea how to even tell if anyone's watching, or
Oh, it's working on YouTube too, babe.
Is it? That's creepy. Anyways. Well, there you go. It's apparently working, and I don't even know how to tell if it's working, and I have no idea how to look at the comments, because I want to answer questions for anyone who's watching this somehow.
Can I jump in and see if I can?
Yeah.
Just for a second.
So, since this is new, I can see the comments now, but I have to like refresh it to look at the comments. Oh, that's confusing too. Oh wait. Oh, it works. Okay, it works. Oh, this is sweet. Okay, so I think I can see, well, I don't know if I can see people's questions as they come up. Anyways,
You should.
either way, this is new. And I take questions in my Facebook group and not on YouTube, just because YouTube's just chaos and random people come in and trolls and whatever. And if you're just trying to help folks out and help the same kind of people out for periods of time, then it's helpful to have a private group that you can go ahead and do coaching in. So this is pretty sweet. This is something I'm going to start doing more often, so that people who aren't in the Facebook group can still learn from Free Coaching Friday, and those who are in the Facebook group can just continue asking questions. This is sweet. Okay. So I'm excited about this. I actually got a pretty nice little streaming setup put together. Let's go ahead and start talking about some cybersecurity questions, because that's the point of Free Coaching Friday. And now that we're doing this on YouTube and on Facebook, and everyone can see what's going on here. First, items of the week. So lately, I've been getting also a lot of questions from people interested in building and running cybersecurity courses. So some of you are already cybersecurity instructors. Some of you are trying to start cybersecurity educational services, things along those lines, coming from different backgrounds, whether it's pen testing, malware analysis. And I've been getting a lot of questions about, how do you start with wanting to teach folks cybersecurity if you're trying to do courses and things like that. Honestly, the most blunt answer to that is start something like a YouTube channel just to see who watches. Because when you make a bunch of content, and that sounds like really selective, because I have a YouTube channel. It doesn't have to be YouTube. It could be an Instagram or something along those lines, but really just start making content if you're trying to teach people. If you want to teach people, you need to start by building an audience of people to teach first, for those who are trying to get that part figured out, if that answers a little bit of that question. So some other questions that educators generally ask is, what kinds of things do you give kids? So I have a number of you who teach high schoolers and middle schoolers. So going a little further into, how do you launch services, like how do you teach certain things? But what about teaching middle schoolers or teaching high schoolers? quite frankly, cybersecurity is one of those things that young folks, when they see it, they're like, oh, that's cool. So there's a cool factor there already. And then you can take things like Linux and the terminal and make little games. And so one thing that I will say is that we do actually work with middle schools and high schools and of the sorts. And we are working on a number of games. We've been working on hacking games for a while. And so whether or not anyone wants to take a look at the hacking games we're coming up with and CTFs to see if that's something that you'd like to look at, to see if you can come up with something of your own, things like that. And hey, welcome for some of you joining in. But yeah, it's in terms of those of you trying to learn how to educate young folks, educating young folks, like, everyone wants something competitive, so give them something where they can do some CTFs where you can see who gets the most of something. CTFs are generally great. If you're trying to teach young folks cybersecurity, there's something called Hack the Box, which, so if you ever see anyone type like HTB, that stands for something called Hack the Box. If you've never heard of Hack the Box, Google Hack the Box and you'll see what I'm talking about. And so a CTF stands for Capture the Flag. I've talked about this in the Facebook group before. And so since YouTube is just like too much information all the time, I'm just going to focus on answering questions for those who are in the Facebook group, like I was saying, and focus on that. So anyways, those are some questions for educators anyways. And then some other questions that I've been getting lately. I've been getting a lot of questions about the LinkedIn video that I posted recently. I talked about this in a previous Free Coaching Friday, but if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll notice one of my most recent videos is on how to essentially find jobs on LinkedIn using a different kind of strategy called curating. I get questions regarding what kinds of certifications are helpful for stuff like that. Certifications are all good and dandy. If you're trying to look for certifications, this is something else that I also have on my channel, which I made a playlist for this recently. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a playlist for the Security Plus. It's basically a lot of videos from Professor Messer and then my strategy and a few other folks' thoughts on the Security Plus. The Security Plus is probably the most general certification in cybersecurity that some jobs just legally require you to have a Security Plus. And even though some of you who talk to me a lot have heard this before, some of you haven't quite heard this just yet, but if you get the Security Plus, you technically qualify for more jobs in general. If you're just trying to get a cybersecurity job or trying to get a certification and you're trying to figure some of these things out. So for those of you who are, doing the job hunt and you're trying to find things to do while you're looking, because I know what it's like when you're trying to look for a job and you're also trying to, while you're waiting, you want to have things to do, so you might as well study. So check out my YouTube channel. You can find out, that's the Ask Nato Riley YouTube channel if you're on Facebook. And then if you're on YouTube, then you're watching me on my YouTube channel, so there you go. But there is, I have a couple playlists, and one of the playlists, like I said, I updated recently, is for basically a free study material that is the information that'll get you what you need for getting a Security Plus certification. And so one thing I like to focus on is, lately, I am more dedicated toward, if you just want to get a job and that's what you're looking for, it's been my hobby to just kind of help folks get work. And so I find every time I start charging for like helping folks get jobs and stuff like that, it's just not very fun to me. I much rather would charge people for like teaching technical kung fu and the really fancy stuff and things like getting raises and stuff like that. But if you just want a job, that's one of the reasons of Free Coaching Fridays. If you just want a job, show up on Free Coaching Fridays, check out some of my content, and then also we decided to make the prerequisites for our product, the Pi'd Hacker Experience. The prerequisites are free now, and the prerequisites are enough to get the information you need if you're just trying to get an entry-level job. If all you want is an entry-level job, look in the description below in the stream or in the description of the post in the Facebook group, and you will see the Pi'd Hacker Pre-requisites. That's free. That's just enough information to get yourself an entry-level job. I don't think it's necessary to spend thousands of dollars to get an entry-level job, but if you want to, get a raise or get a higher end job and start getting promotions and things like that, the education starts to matter a lot. And regardless of where that information comes from, whether you learn it from college or you learn it from self-teaching it DIY, whether you want to get certifications to get that knowledge, it's the certifications and the knowledge, all that stuff. What it really does is it helps you up your game, get the higher salaries, move further along. But in terms of just like entry level work, this is a question I've been getting a lot. I get this question a lot, period, is how do you get entry level work in cybersecurity? Entry level work in cybersecurity it's more about understanding how the industry works and networking to get a job, and it's less about your certifications unless you're trying to get like a senior level job or some mid-level jobs. You're trying to do like something very specific to Docker and Docker security, then a Docker certification might make a whole lot of benefit for you. So anyways, some things that are new to Free Coaching Friday that I'm going to start doing is historically, even on my YouTube channel, I just kind of talk business strategies, and even in this Free Coaching Friday, I just recognize that I tend to just say the same things over and over again, because really it's the same advice that gets the same results. So it's like, if you want a job, I have the same advice always. If you want a negotiation for a raise, it's generally the same advice always. And what I haven't really put a lot of time into is kind of showing some of the technical chops for how you can actually build products or build new solutions or design code and things like that. It's so I put together a very odd streaming architecture. Got myself a new graphics card set up to kind of help accommodate that, which is what's helping me basically pump a stream to multiple platforms. I might expand to Twitch too, who knows. But one thing is, with all the things that I do, it makes sense for me to start showing technical stuff. So I put some things together, and I'm kind of better at technical things anyways, so I'm not a good video editor. Laura's much better at video editing. I'm much better at engineering things. It's just kind of what I do. But one thing that we've been working on for quite some time, and by quite some time, I mean quite some time, this is actually going to be pretty sweet, is something called the Olympiad. So if anyone's ever heard of, let me just kind of start with a whiteboard actually. So something that I teach, and not just teach, but something that I build, is we're building open source code, and we are essentially building an open source SIEM, Security Information Event Management. And let's talk about what a SIEM is, because if I just start telling people like, oh yeah, we make SIEMs, okay, so there's a video game called The Sims, there's simulations, there's all kinds of things that have SIEM, but what is SIEM? And I get that question a lot, and I've kind of talked about it, but now I can actually kind of whiteboard live. For those who have taken classes with me, it's like you've seen me whiteboarding for forever, but I haven't really done much whiteboarding like in the Facebook group, and I don't really do much whiteboarding in YouTube. I mostly do that teaching, because, I mean, I don't know, when you're paid to do whiteboarding all day long, it's not the most motivational thing to be like, oh yeah, more whiteboarding, yeah. But let's get into it. So the big question is, what is SIEM? SIEM stands for Security Information Event Management. This is going to be, yeah, and once again, Free Coaching Friday. I'm just answering general things, like questions people ask me all the time. And now we're immortalizing this information in videos so that I can start linking it to people and be like, check out this video at this timestamp. I'll answer all your questions right there. Because, yes, it's amazing. And another thing is I can answer a lot more people's questions this way. Oh, and hello from, not from where I am, but yes, it's good timing for Good timing for international viewers. Thank you for viewing. So also, if you have any questions about anything related to international cybersecurity and all that good stuff, I come from international cybersecurity and I focus on remote jobs and things like that. Welcome from Japan. Yes. And that is the Japanese flag. That is a good point. But yeah, so it's getting pretty fun. We're starting to get people from all over, like, for a change, now that the group is growing, the community is growing, the YouTube community is growing, and things are moving so fast that even I can't keep up with it. We launched a product recently, and we got 50 orders before I even knew what was going on, which is called the Pi'd Hacker Experience. And the Pi'd Hacker Experience, you build a SIM. You build with SIM technology. So everything that we do is around SIM technology. We produce this open source technology, and it stands for Security Information Event Management. And what that is it's like an all-seeing eye in data. And I'm going to make a little parallel here because it's kind of hard to give people an idea of what SIM is, ultimately. Like, it's a really complicated thing to be like, okay, so SIM, Security Information Event Management, what does that mean? Well, we can develop different things with it. We can develop things like artificial intelligence. We can develop things like full company automation, orchestration, and basically the ultimate benefit of designing something like a SIM, Security Information Event Management, is that you can basically automate an entire business and orchestrate an entire business and control an entire business at the end of the day. That's the benefit of having SIM technology, for anyone who's wondering what that is. So if you are someone who knows a lot about firewalls and you know a lot about networking, that's one element of working in SIM. And then if you're trying to find ways to bring everything together and monitor and all that good stuff, then that's essentially, why we want to have Security Information Event Management, where we can see the firewalls, we can see what's going on with user end computers and servers, and it doesn't really matter what type of computer. We essentially want to see everything. I can even, if I just Google what is SIM, and we take a look at the kinds of results that pop up, and I go over to images here, the kinds of diagrams that pop up, you'll see like something like this. If I just say, let's take a look at whatever this image is here. It shows that if we're talking about SIM, then we're collecting and analyzing logs, log analysis, event correlation, log forensics, all this stuff, and then we, use that for the sake of retaining data, managing databases, architecting all kinds of things. And then we have system and device log monitoring that we can do with all of these different types of things. And so when we think about the idea of monitoring or watching or evaluating or reviewing what's going on with something or someone or some entity online, SIM is basically something that just lets us see what's going on. And an easy way to kind of compare, what does SIM look like when we work with it, is if you go to like a website called trends.google.com. Trends.google.com, or Google Trends, have you, is what we're talking about here. Google Trends is something that is designed to take all of the information from Google and all the things that people are typing and searching, and you can check this out for yourself. And you can see, what are people looking for? What are people interested in? What are the things that people are searching for most frequently, because there's reasons why people look for things. So right now, if we take a look at recently trending, then we have all of this. These are the top items for what's trending right now. We have Utah Jazz, apparently, in the area that I'm in. And we can even expand our search options in Google Trends and see, based on whatever information, we can just see in the United States what are people looking for, and we can expand that out, and we can say, how about in Canada? What are people looking for in Canada? Or for that matter, what is everyone interested in at Japan right now? And so we can look at what everyone's searching for under one looking lens, and SIEM works that way, but with data that's associated with security information, and for the sake of cybersecurity, not for the sake of searching necessarily. And so at the end of the day, the skill set that comes with learning how Google Trends works, if you wanted to see, for example, let's say that you wanted to know if privacy is something that people are looking for right now. Do people want more privacy? And we search that. We can see that over time, privacy is something that people tend to search for. And then we can compare that with just cybersecurity in general. And we can, let's just say worldwide. And let's say cybersecurity. We can make little comparisons in Google Trends by just typing little searches in here in Google Trends and just seeing what, these are called pivots or things to search about. But as we can see here, there are more people who are interested in privacy or searching for privacy than are searching for cybersecurity. So if you are trying to do something that you're, trying to identify a certain type of threat or a certain type of individual or a certain type of anything, SIEM is about taking oceans of data and then making it so that you can carve up those oceans of data where we can say, okay, hey, all of the information in Google here, even though this isn't SIEM right here, this is just big data analytics. SIEM is using security information. And that's ultimately, in a nutshell, what is SIEM, and the end result when you bring in a whole bunch of data from workstations and firewalls and IPS devices, which is intrusion protection, intrusion defense devices, all these different types of devices. SIEM is something that basically, we have this thing, SIEM. And if we're trying to say we have a network, say we have a network, security information and event management of a network. So if we want to secure a network, then the thing that we want to start with is we want to be able to see everything. We want to be able to see firewalls. We want to be able to see workstations. We want to be able to see servers. Different things. We want to be able to see all of the things. How do I? Yeah, so anyways, I'm just going to say that. We'll just say all of the things. Everything. So the point of SIEM is we want to be able to see what's going on with this. We want to see what's going on with this. We want to see what's going on with this over here. We want to be able to see what's going on with all of the things. All of the things, period. And that's the point of SIEM. To make your network visible so that things on your network are not hiding and that it's not a big deal. It's like if you just want to cross the street and you want to cross the street blindfolded, then crossing the street blindfolded can be a dangerous thing. But let's say that you want to cross the street, but you look both ways. Well, then it's not as big of a deal. You can look, and if there's a car coming, then wait till the car's there. I mean, not, gone by, driven past. Well, with SIEM, it's kind of like that. If you want to be able to look at your network like looking both ways before crossing the street, you can see if there's a threat on your network. You can just see a threat clear as day. So we can see threats. And that's the whole point of SIEM, is to make threats just a lot more just generically visible. And as a result, SIEM requires you to have, generally skills around everything, no matter what it is. And it's why a lot of individuals don't generally have a lot of skills around SIEM, or a lot of people don't really know what it is. It's something that you see especially in large corporations who have a lot of data and a lot of employees and a lot of staff, like mega companies. We're talking about like these big companies. So hopefully that's interesting and helpful. And hopefully that gives folks an idea at a high level of, what is security, information, and event management, because that's something that we focus on. And one thing that security, information, and event management does is it allows you the ability to have more privacy in a network as well. So the reason why you're able to essentially and effectively build privacy in a network with SIEM is because if you can see what's going on, you can also see, is something vulnerable? Is something showing up that shouldn't be showing up? Do you need to make sure that something's not showing up that way, or make sure that something that is accessible is not accessible? So if you want to have better privacy, you want to have ways to be able to just like look around your network and just know. Because if you can't even do that, you don't even know if an invasive connection has just connected to your network, if you don't even know how to just scan your network to see if there's a new unknown connection or something along those lines. And so there could be someone just hanging out in your home network or wherever have you, or your business network, and you just have no idea that they're just there if you don't have something that lets you just look around and see. It's kind of like walking to a mall blindfolded too, for that matter. if you're like running a business and you don't have something that can see. And so we are effectively building solutions right now for that very thing. And this is kind of, let's see, I don't even know, the camera's kind of high, but I've been building little dashboards on the screen, and the cord is not long enough for me to really show this, so maybe I can't show my little security operations center. But basically, we're helping folks build security operations centers, just in general, because if you learn how to build a security operations center for your home, then you can do it for big businesses, and big businesses pay the most money. And I come from doing enterprise. This is the stuff that I did. And so, it's, if you're just trying to look for a good job that's pretty interesting, or if you want to have something that's pretty good for starting a business, or what's happening is we had launched this Pi'd Hacker Experience product, and I thought that most people were going to use it to get a job, and actually folks are using it to start, like, launch products and services, and so folks have been starting vCISO services and things like that, with basically building SIEMs on Raspberry Pis, building little security operation centers. So yeah, and I agree, someone made a good point. It's security awareness should be at the home, and I agree, because ultimately folks don't even know when they have a breach in their home, which is a real shame, because if you have a family and your goal is to keep your family safe, that does include making sure that folks have privacy. And that used to not be something that really mattered. Like if we go back, even to 2010, back in 2010, like smartphones weren't even that big of a thing yet. Nowadays, someone can get their smartphone out and scan your entire network from their phone, and just become very invasive. Especially, modern technology, modern mobile technology is rather terrifying. But you go back to 2010, 2005, and cybersecurity is a thing, but it was still part of IT for a reason, information security. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about SIEM. And then I also have been getting questions about a lot about cloud, like how do you get a cloud job? So let's actually just kind of outline, what is cloud in the first place, because cloud and SIEM go hand in hand, which is why I'm going to talk about these questions together. Because you get the question, what's SIEM, and how do you get a cloud engineering job? I get questions about how to get jobs all the time. I get questions about how to launch products. Lately, it's been questions about cloud and getting vCISO, launching vCISO services, things like that. So if you're trying to launch, or not launch, if you're trying to get a job in cloud, let's talk about what cloud is first. Cloud. At the end of the day, cloud is basically a series of what we call nodes. And let's talk about what a node is. For those of you who've worked with technology, you probably know what a node is. But for those who aren't as familiar with servers or networking, you might have never heard of a node, and I've taught enough classes to where folks might know all kinds of things, and then you start talking about cloud and you start talking about node architectures, and it's just not something that they've had exposure to yet. So a node is, you could think of it as a device with an IP address. It's a lot more sophisticated than that, but this is just a high level, just trying to bake it down to a really basic element here. For one, what is cloud? Let's make the colors a little better here. So what is cloud? And cloud is something that we secure with SIEM, which is why we talked about SIEM. But what do you do with SIEM? Well, SIEM works well where there's a lot of data, and the cloud has a lot of data. And if you want to get into cloud and you're trying to get into things like SIEM, or you're trying to cloud security, SIEM is the cloud, well, not the cloud security technology. It's one of many cloud security technologies. But if you're working with SIEM, you're working with cloud generally. And then there are other aspects of, if you want to get into SIEM, you can actually start with cloud engineering to get into more SIEM-based roles, which SIEM-based roles tend to pay, well, tech jobs in general tend to pay really well, so tech jobs. So a node is a device with an IP address, for those who aren't sure of what that is. And that could be, what does that mean? That could be a node, could be a workstation, cell phone, server. It doesn't really matter. If it has an IP address, we could consider it a node. And then let's say that we want to have nodes that work together in conjunction with each other and in unison and accord. Then if we have what's called a cluster, that's basically a bunch of nodes that work together. There we go. So if you have a cluster, this is kind of nice doing having a whiteboard that I can stream. Cluster is a series of nodes that work together. There we go. And you could go so far as to say that a cluster can actually have a bunch of nodes that have their own unique IP addresses, and then we can give a cluster its own IP address. And so a cluster can essentially allow multiple IP addresses to operate as, like, say, one computer, one supercomputer, right? And so then we'd have different IP addresses, and that's something that can get very confusing. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of cloud architecture stuff and talk about Docker a little bit and how you can actually kind of home lab, because I got so many questions. Let's see. Before I get into this question, let's see if there's a high level one. Well, anyways, so question about, building home labs to learn these sorts of things. Honestly, building a home lab, as long as you have hardware, it could be old server, it could be a Raspberry Pi. I love Raspberry Pis. If you don't have any hardware to play with, get a Raspberry Pi. It's, if you're just trying to be like, how do I get some hardware that I can learn cybersecurity on? Grab a Raspberry Pi from somewhere on Amazon, Micro Center, I don't know, get one from somewhere. And we are also releasing an overclocker's guide and insured Raspberry Pi ourselves for those who want to build Raspberry Pis that they can destroy and not be too worried about it. And you want to get into things like overclocking. But you want to learn cloud, just get some hardware. Could even be a series of old laptops. Let's say you have 3 old laptops. Learn how to make a cluster out of 3 old laptops, or a cluster out of Pi's, or a cluster out of who knows what. Just learn how to make a cluster. So I have a couple of things that I can show you regarding, how can you build. Let's write this down. How to build a cloud home lab. If you're trying to build a cloud home lab, at the end of the day, I would say try to focus on learning SIEM with an ecosystem, just a little cloud ecosystem, and you'll basically learn all things cloud. Because if you learn SIEM, you have to learn all things data, and if you learn cloud, then you have to learn nodes and big data and network management and IPs and all this crazy stuff. And at the end of the day, if you understand these bits really well, you can segue into pen testing, you can segue into network engineering, because you do have to do some network engineering and some data engineering and all these things. This is what we ultimately call, this is what data science actually is. It's the science of working with data. How does the data move? How does the data network? How do we engineer the data? How do we massage the data? How do we build metrics from it? We have all these different things. So, data science. Cloud is basically data science. That's one way that we could just really narrow it down and just go high level and be like, what is it at a high level? It's data science. Cloud is data science. And how do we secure it? Generally with SIEM at the highest level, because we use SIEM with big data, and cloud is basically big data. So we can generally assume that cloud equals big data. So let's take a look at that for just a sec here. So if cloud equals big data, you're trying to get into SIEM, or you're trying to get into cloud in general, then SIEM, let's just say that, SIEM secures big data. And it helps establish better privacy. And it also helps us understand the skills involved with looking around a network. And so if cloud is big data, and we want to learn how cloud works, and we want to be able to do these things at home, we want to be able to do these things just with Free Coaching Friday and not go spend $10,000 to go to some place of who knows what. And yes, I have taught places where people end up paying like $10,000 to learn stuff, and I'm like, you can learn the same stuff for free, so why not? Let's do it. Let's learn the same stuff that people pay $10,000 even to me for free. And then for those who do pay me, nowadays I charge for other things. Because I guess at some point you also get tired of teaching the same things. So, and this industry needs to expand, if I'm honest. Like, we need more people in this industry. So this is a Raspberry Pi. How do I put it? This is me remotely connecting to a Raspberry Pi. I can actually look at the Raspberry Pi's desktop. I've set this up to where I can look at my server's desktop or my Raspberry Pi desktop. I'm actually pretty excited about this setup here that I've put together. So if I wanted to go directly to the Raspberry Pi, I'm excited that I finally can. So I have a capture card. I've got like 2 graphics cards running in this thing for various reasons. I actually video edit out of a virtual machine on this same machine, and because I stream separately from the virtual machine, there can be video editing going on this system while it's streaming and doing other things, and it's all unhindered and unbothered. So that's always fun. So let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Yeah, so we have this SIEM that we've been building, and we have this threat intelligence engine that we've designed called the Inner Athena. this is just a foundational architecture that we've been working on, and lately we've been using this mostly as an educational tool, and teaching folks how to work with stuff. But at the end of the day, SIEM is SIEM. SIEM works like SIEM. And if we go back to my remote connection to it instead of just showing the Pi's screen itself, on a Raspberry Pi, I have that Raspberry Pi server sending a basically connection that lets me connect to a little farm of systems that I can use to learn cybersecurity, or just practice cybersecurity things, or monitor my own network. Now, I did have some more robust monitoring going on here, but I've been messing around because this is my development station. And I had some dashboard that's not connecting. So, but anyways, I can still kind of. This is actually pretty neat. So if I click on, actually, let me just talk about what this is. So on a Raspberry Pi, you can install something called Docker. Let me talk about what we're looking at. How to learn cloud. You can learn cloud with Docker. Actually, I should just type docker.com. And if you go to docker.com, you have a Raspberry Pi, a laptop, a server, and you just want to like build an ecosystem that makes it really easy to learn cloud things. Docker, you can get started with Docker for free. And we just use Docker for free for the open source community stuff, and we do open source engineering with Docker, and you can do open source engineering with Docker because it's free to play with. And our open source Olympiad technology, our SIEM that we're building, is all Docker based and Kubernetes based, which these are tools that if you're trying to work in cloud, you should learn Docker, you should learn Kubernetes. And then Docker gives you some ability to learn advanced networking and cloud-based networking, things like that. And then I have a cluster of Pis. One's like 7 Pis, and then I have just a single Pi node. And one I have, a full-on cloud with 6 Pis, or I guess 7 Pis, or however many Pis. And then the other one's just like a single Pi, but I can emulate a cloud where, notice right here, this thing says Athena 1, this thing says Athena 0. You could think of these as like little servers, little virtual computer servers that this Docker tool basically allows me to create. Kind of like little virtual machines, if you've heard of a virtual machine. And if you know what containerization is already, then this is nothing that exciting. What I'm saying, a lot more than what I'm saying about this at a high level, of course. But Docker lets you basically create these little devices that can talk to each other. So if I click on Athena 0 here, and I want to use this, it has an IP address and everything. I can type a command that shows me my IP address and see that I have this 172.20.03 IP address. Well, if you're trying to learn cloud, you need to understand how IP addresses work. And you need to understand how these nodes work. So if it has an IP address, then it's a node, right? So let's go back to the whiteboard. So cloud. A node equals a device with an IP address. If it's a virtual device, if it still has an IP address, it's a node. A node equals workstation, cell phone server, and if I update this, we can even say container, etc. If it has an IP address, And a cluster is a bunch of nodes that work together to basically be one. Oh, OpenVOS is awesome. Someone commented on love using Docker for Nessus and OpenVOS. OpenVOS is a surprisingly easy tool to use too. Well, at least easier than when I first used it. I thought it was going to be really a lot more complicated than it is. Neat little tool. For anyone who's watching this and you're trying to learn about vulnerability scanning, things like that, there's a tool called OpenVOS, and it's something you can play with Docker, and it's a great way to also learn Docker networking, things like that. Because we're talking about Docker, we're talking about networking, we're talking about how to learn this stuff. play with a tool called OpenVOS. That's a sweet one. So Docker, you get these little things with IP addresses. That's what we want to know. So as long as you know, get a device. If you don't know what kind of device, then go get a Raspberry Pi or something because they're affordable. And then learn what an IP address is, learn how to work with one, learn how to network all the different things on there, and learn how to use something like Docker. And something about Docker is it lets you create networks inside of it. So right here, this is something called a GUI, Portainer, for anyone who's not used to navigating to a server remotely with a browser, things like that. Looks like your own website, but it's not quite the same as your own website. If we click on networks right here, we can see that I can create these little, what it says, what's called a subnet, if you can see what that says. And I can create little IP ranges and create things that allow me to cluster containers together. And you can create like a little container cloud just to learn how it works. If you're trying to learn how all these things work and you're trying to home lab and you want to have a little lab, you don't need the fastest thing to do a lab. If you're not trying to run an enterprise, who cares how fast your little containers are? That's why all you need is something like a Raspberry Pi. Bam, you have your own little scientific lab. You can come in here and you can click on these containers. And let's see. We can go over and take a look at the metrics for whatever's going on with this container, which I don't think I have it doing anything. I could probably run a command to make it do something. You know, that would actually be kind of interesting. Let me do this. So if I take this, oh, it's not installed. Let's see, one of these containers has a little analytics app installed on it, which I would like to show you. Oh, there we go, because I've been experimenting with different little things. Let's go ahead and get a little activity running and monitor. Let's monitor an activity monitor with an activity monitor. That's kind of a meta thing, isn't it? So with Docker, you can do things like learn how to monitor analytics. You can learn how to monitor processes. You can learn how to monitor process monitors. I mean, all kinds of stuff. You can learn how process IDs work. You can learn how logging works. You can learn how to see, like right here, you can see how to use log analysis at a very high level with just basic Docker stuff and a little tool called Portainer here, which is what I'm using for a GUI. And, you know, if you want to learn how to build cloud, you want to learn how to do networking, you want to learn how to do these things, learn how to build networks in these things, learn how to make these things talk to each other, learn how to install stuff. Because notice one of these little containers, the Athena 0, I typed the command for this htop and it didn't work. And then I went to Athena 1 and htop works. And this, learn why that is. Learn why commands work. Learn how to make commands work. Learn how to install things. You know, play around with Linux. That's a lot of my recommendations, and I feel like there's the answer to a whole lot of questions, because a lot of people ask questions about, you know, how do you learn Linux? Let me just say, you learn Linux by just getting any version of Linux and just doing things with it. And so how about you just start learning Docker with Linux? There you go. If you start playing with Docker and Linux, then that's a great way to learn Docker and Linux at the same time. And if you're trying to learn cloud, well, there you go. Now, if you're not trying to learn cloud, you can still use Docker to practice pen testing. Docker's great for practicing pen testing, if I'm honest. If I click on this, you can see this inner DNS control Pi-hole is a unique Pi-hole that I created. And I had created an attack that makes all of these containers no longer be able to use DNS. So this is now having issues because I kind of disabled the things that made it do that, and I got to go... This is my home lab. This is how I practice pen testing stuff. I do code theory here. But Docker makes it really easy to recreate these. So if I wanted to go and say like this thing right here, this inner DNS control container that has this thing called Pi-hole running on it, I have a tool called Pi-hole installed in a Docker container. You can figure out how to network a Pi-hole to talk to everything in your home, and then figure out how to use it for red team attacks to like do things like use a Pi-hole to make it to where some users around you that you very specifically target can't browse anything, period. Like nothing that they try to navigate to with a URL or browser will just not work. You can do things like that using Pi-hole and make like a red team Pi-hole. It wasn't really built for that. A Pi-hole is really built to be a network-wide ad blocker, but you can also you can also use it to just be a network-wide block everything, or there's just different things you can do with it. You can use it for threat intelligence. You can use it for data aggregation. So Pi-hole is just a great data generator, and so we use it for building threat intelligence. You can even add threat lists to it. It comes with some default threat lists, this Pi-hole. But anyways, Docker lets you learn how to troubleshoot systems. So like if this thing's not working and I'm trying to learn how to be a better engineer and learn how to troubleshoot stuff, then I can learn how to go and be like, okay, so how can I look at the logs and investigate why this thing's not working? Well, Docker makes it easy to learn that too. So you can be like, okay, so this is forensics skills. If you're learning how to reverse engineer, okay, why is this not working? Let's dig through these logs here. Yes, that's generally how this stuff works. So yeah, I'm trying to up the game of Free Coaching Friday just because at this point a lot of the information that I share is redundant, and I do find now that we have a lot more entrepreneurs coming around and folks trying to start businesses. If you're trying to start a business, I didn't realize how many people want to try to start businesses right now. I guess it makes sense because like times online business, there's all kinds of traffic going on online, and sometimes it's easier to just start a business. I've had folks who were looking for work and they got money trying to sell their own services faster than getting a job. So yeah, I guess it makes sense why folks want to know how to launch services. So you can launch business services with just nothing but a Raspberry Pi and some open source code and an internet connection, just so you know. That's some information. So anyways, for those who are new to Free Coaching Friday, anyone who's on YouTube, because this is the first time that I've streamed this over to YouTube, yes, this is a Facebook group thing where I answer questions in the Facebook group. And one of the reasons behind that is at some point, since I'm the Ask Nato Riley YouTube channel, between my full-time business stuff and then all of the questions that I get, and I already have trouble keeping up with doing business, YouTube development, who knows what, side projects, I don't even know, side partnerships. Trying to answer everyone's questions has been very hard for me. So I'm like, okay, what's the easiest way for me to answer everyone's questions? Make it so that I can just go to one place and get all the questions that folks ask there. So Facebook group, join the Facebook group, ask your questions, and then it keeps me from getting just overwhelmed and just flooded with too many questions. And I'm just going to keep doing this. And some days I have more time, some days I have less time. Today it's a little experimental, but I'm going to probably keep doing these streams like this. And even outside of Free Coaching Friday, I'm probably going to just start streaming a lot more often and just stream whatever I want, like when it's not Friday. And then Friday I'll always do coaching on Friday anyways, but I'll just start talking about things like stuff, whatever people want to do throughout the week, because it's so much. This setup is so much easier now. I just finished setting it up. It's actually pretty sweet. So let me talk about the setup. I'm gonna talk about this because I'm excited. So with Pi'd Hacker Experience, this new product that we released, it's been helping folks get jobs. It's been helping folks start little businesses, get little sales, side businesses, all kinds of things, put together little services. And something that came of that is we have been taking all of the profits from that and then reinvesting it into figuring out how we can help more people. And one of the ways that we're reinvesting that is we did some serious upgrades to our ability to do streaming and things like that. So I can do proper multi-streams both to the Facebook group and over to YouTube at the same time. And it's a real strange experience for me, just because I'm new to doing this, I guess, with the streaming. But yeah, so we upgraded everything, so it makes it easier for me to just crank out more content a lot faster by just hitting the go button, and I can just talk. But yeah, so anyways, so if you want your questions asked, or I guess if you want your questions answered, then you can direct message me or come post in the Facebook group. Most people direct message me, which is fine, and it works. That's perfect. So if you're in the Facebook group and you've been direct messaging me, I know you're in the group. I'll hook you up. We'll give you some answers, and then you can always join live if you're awake during whatever time, because I do have we're an international group. So some folks are sleeping at any given time, so I understand that. And that's one thing. At one point I was trying to focus on a set time, and it's real tough. So I find that if you try to do like a live webinar and then it ends and there's not like a video for folks to watch afterwards, then everyone misses out on the free Coaching Friday information. So I'm like, okay, so for those who aren't awake, at least they can ask questions throughout the week, and then I can answer all of the questions from throughout the week at once, and that's what I do now. So that it doesn't matter if you miss this. It doesn't matter. Just ask your questions, and then Friday I go back and comb through my messages and try to answer all the ones I can. There's a lot more too. And some of you I had long discussions with, so I might not talk about those ones. Well, there's one I'll talk about, because this was a really good discussion, and I do think everyone should hear this information now that I'm thinking about it. And like I said, the stream, this format makes it easier for me to get information to other people. It makes it easier for people to know when you can get information from me, how you can submit your questions to me, how you can get your questions answered. And one of those really great questions of the week, really great discussions of the week, was regarding when you're new to cybersecurity. Maybe you've never been in cybersecurity. It doesn't really matter. You're new to it. Haven't done it. There's trying to figure out the right information that's going to help you succeed and help you flourish and help you get into the industry. Usually a lot of the conventional advice says go get certifications, and certifications are great. Just understand that after you get, say, about 2 or 3 certifications, if your goal is to learn, certifications remain great always. If your goal is to get a job, then getting an entry-level job and getting like 5 certifications, you get diminishing returns after a while on getting certifications. But someone made a good point that, well, how do you know what advice to even follow in the cybersecurity industry? Because everyone's trying to sell a course, or everyone's trying to sell something, or everyone's trying to get noticed, or everyone's trying to maybe they're not trying to sell something. Maybe they're just trying to learn themselves, and they're new to cybersecurity and they want to share the brand new fresh information that they just learned. But there's not a lot of resources out there in cybersecurity from, I guess, just really experienced individuals. And I guess that's true, because even the folks that I talk to, they're like, yeah, there's not a lot of information for like folks who are a little more senior. There's not a lot of information out there for from people who have like a decade of experience. There's a few of us who promote openly these days, I guess. not many, but the advice that you run into is you need to have the best technical skills on the planet. I'm just going to say that's not true. Having the best technical skills on the planet, technical skills also come with diminishing returns, because at some point you have to understand how the business works and you have to understand how people work, but you have to understand all 3 of these things. which I guess this brings me back to another whiteboard opportunity. Let me do that. Let's whiteboard again. So this will be the last one because I've been going on for a while now. But let's see. If you're trying to get a job, you're new to cybersecurity, you don't really know what you're looking for. You're trying to figure out, like, okay, so what do I pay attention to? So there's technical skills. There's business skills, and we have people skills. Okay. Technical skills, business skills, and the point of all of this is the technical skills, they're rather black and white. They're mathematical in nature. And business skills, they also have diminishing returns. People skills, they also have diminishing returns. And so it gets real confusing on what do you focus on if you're trying to get raises, trying to get into the right thing. And it's just genuinely confusing. If we're just honest, it's so confusing trying to figure out. And so I see folks trying to follow the advice that they got, like, oh, you got to be the most technical, or you got to know everything about compliance. And someone made a good point of, like, it sounds like some of you've been stuck in a good way to put it is tutorial hell. That's a good way to put it, where you're not even sure anymore if what you're continuing to learn is even helpful. Which I've been there too, and I'm guilty of being a person who I went and became ultra technical before picking up the business skills and the people skills, and just to find same thing for me too, that you just find diminishing returns in your technical skills. And but you do want to have technical skills. You need to be technical, you need to understand the business, and you need to understand the people. And so moving toward a senior level role and a senior level skill set does mean having elements of all of these, which is why it does take a good 5 years to really start to navigate the cybersecurity industry well. Maybe you start off being a little stronger on the business side. So you might start off on the side being a little better on the people side. So let's kind of look at some of the benefits here of, like, where do you start in cybersecurity? Doesn't matter where you start. Within 5 years, you need all these things anyways. So we have social engineering, right? People skills, understanding of general social engineering. Then business skills, we could think of that as compliance. If you understand compliance, you're going to understand the business skills enough to probably navigate the cybersecurity space quite well. None of these things are simple to understand, though. That's the big problem. You might need to give each one of these at least 1 or 2 years to really start to bring it all together for cybersecurity and turn it into a single skill. And then technical skills, that's that's our hacking or blue team skills, but I guess we can just call that purple team. So whether it's defense, so it might be hacking, might be things like SIEM, pen testing, who knows. But we have our technical chops over here. You need to understand enough of that to be able to do the job, and then we have to understand why it matters. Companies get fined if they don't do certain things, and if they get fined enough, it's just highly destructive. Just highly destructive. And then we have people skills, social engineering. Like, people are confusing enough, and most people have an aptitude in one of these areas naturally. And my recommendation is, if you're trying to get into cybersecurity in general, follow the advice of the thing that you click with the most first. Like, find the thing that's easiest for you and focus on that first, because I'll see folks who pick up the compliance stuff and pick it up so well, but then I'll be mentoring them, and they'll be, oh, but I'm not good at the hacking skills. I'm not good at I don't know how to use Linux. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because you can pick those skills up later. You can start with one of any. If you're bad at the hacking skills, maybe you never become good at the hacking skills. You just have to be good at least one of these to get good at cybersecurity. And then if you want to get, like, I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades, which makes me, I guess, a master of SIEM. But if you wanted to be a master of GRC, you don't want to be a jack of all trades anyways. You could just never be good at technical anything. You can just be a business mastermind. This is where you can become a CISO. You want to become a CISO, you might not know a lick of code and go get paid $200,000 a year as a CISO. So who cares if you don't know any code? Or if you want to get really good at the social engineering skills, I mean, you could become someone who just runs phishing campaigns. Phishing campaigns are basically, you just run marketing campaigns. So if you're a marketer and you want to segue into cybersecurity, go get hired running phishing campaigns for folks. Just do social engineering. Do the same thing. Like, if you've been running email and ad campaigns, it's the same thing. Now go get a cybersecurity job doing marketing, and then call it red team and call it hacking. Bam, there you go, done. Marketing. I guess I should move this down a little bit. People skills. There we go. And then we have purple team, yeah, technical chops. If you're just really only good at the technical stuff, you can quite literally be the most antisocial person who just hides in a cave. At one point, I just worked in a lab, and for like 2 years, I don't think I saw the sun. I don't know. Maybe I did, but not much. And, if your technical skills are strong enough, you don't necessarily need these other skills if you don't want them, or if you do decide to go a little more jack of all trades at some point and diversify. As long as you find what you're good at, you'll end up being a master of something. Just do the thing that you find that you have natural affinity for. That's my argument. If you want to find the best advice for what you have a natural affinity for. Find the best advice for what you have a natural affinity for. Because everyone's brain works differently. And at the end of the day, teams would never work if everyone's brain worked the same way, and that's true. So if everyone thought the same way, if everyone thought like I do, we'd be doomed as a species. If I'm just honest. So have mercy if the world all thought like Nato. We would be doomed. So anyways, I appreciate you all. If anyone has any last questions, because this is my advice on, how do you kind of get straight to it and not waste so much time trying to figure out what's the right advice to follow in the first place. Crazy world out there. I'll be doing this every Friday, so if you don't have if you don't remember your questions now, or whatever's going on, we'll be around. So send your questions throughout the week. If you send me your questions anywhere that's not Facebook, I try my best to get back to folks, just responding to them. But if you want me to respond to your business and coaching questions, then you need to join the Facebook group, and you need to ask the questions in the Facebook group, or you can direct message me as long as you're a Facebook group member. And this is just to make it easier for me to properly and more efficiently address everyone's questions, to really try to help folks out. Now we're going to stream on, this goes to YouTube too now, also, so that folks can see that, if this is the right thing for you, then you can come join the Facebook group. And some of you just really want the information, and you never need to join the Facebook group. So for a lot of you, it might never make sense to join the Facebook group, so don't do something that doesn't make sense for you. Just like what I'm teaching here, even I'm going to tell you not to do something or buy something from me if it doesn't make sense from you, because you got to do things that make sense. And I guess I'm just too logical for that, which is why I can't. People are like, why do you give certain things away for free? Because it doesn't make sense for me to just charge money for things that no. So just go get a job, go do some cool stuff, go make some money, go get some sales, go launch some new services, and ask your questions throughout the week, and I'm more than happy to help you out. And as I grow, I'll have to keep coming up with more and more ways to kind of manage the ever-growing community, which is good. And another good question, what technologies do I need to build the home SIEM? That's a really good question. I would say the easiest technologies to just build a home SIEM for, just like the fastest you can crank one out with would be something like, let's say you want technologies to build home SIEM the easiest way possible. Just to like pick it up, do it, start doing it. I'm gonna say Docker for one, because you want to understand microservices. And then after Docker, I would say something like Pi-hole, but a DNS monitoring tool that has syslog. So you want to have syslog data. So there are other ways to get syslog data. If you have a firewall, then you want to say firewall with syslog. You want to have that. That's something that you want to have. For example, I have ASUS makes a lot of outstanding routers for home SIEM makers. So if you have an ASUS router, and depending on the router you have, some routers have built-in firewalls. But for learning at home, a lot of routers have syslog already. And then from there, send all the syslog to a tool called Splunk. Some of you have already heard of Splunk, some of you haven't heard of Splunk. Splunk is a data science tool, but you can use it to build a SIEM. And the nice thing about Splunk is Splunk actually has a free course where you can basically learn how to build a SIEM, learn how to do all this stuff with it. And then I would say learn how to build Splunk in a container. And then I would also say learn how to build Pi-hole in a container. And this is called microservice engineering. So you want to learn microservice engineering just in general. Microservice. And the simple way of talking about how to learn microservice engineering is building apps inside containers. So I would say this is a very helpful thing. So I would say do something like consider building Splunk in a Docker container and Pi-hole in a Docker container and send the syslog over to Splunk. And yeah, you can run Pi-hole on a Pi. If you don't have a Raspberry Pi, you can use a virtual machine. I use a Raspberry Pi with Docker installed on it and Pi-hole. And then also, if you have a Raspberry Pi, I would say build a VPN in a container as well. Because this is something, VPNs help you funnel data, and then also do syslog with that. So, and there's one other thing that you can experiment with, which is Splunk has what's called syslog forwarders. And you can do all of this with a Pi and virtual machines. Splunk you might not be able to do with a Pi. You might need to build Splunk with like a virtual machine. So let's make this a unique color. So you can build Splunk in a virtual machine. If you go over to Splunk's website, which I'll leave this on the screen for just a sec, so that you can look at all of the elements that I wrote here. But technologies to build a home SIEM, get Docker. Something like Pi-hole makes it painfully easy to learn how to start building threat intelligence, all that good stuff. And also we have, I have a white paper that I can provide you with now that I'm thinking about it. So let me get you this other document. Which I'll just put in the chat actually in the Facebook group. Which will make, this won't take me too long. This has a guide for how to build things that you can, like building the Pi-hole in a container, all that good stuff. So this won't take me too long, or at least so I thought. It shouldn't take me too long. I'm so bad at finding things. Ah, here we go. Okay, so I found this link. I'm going to add this in the chat in Facebook. This is just helpful for learning how to build the intelligence in your Raspberry Pi. So I'm just going to paste that in the Facebook chat, and that is basically a white paper for our SIEM intelligence tool. So then finally, if you go to Splunk and you say free training and you just Google Splunk free training, they have this free Splunk fundamentals on their own website. And really, this Splunk fundamentals is really nice. It's like it's between that white paper and like the Splunk fundamentals, you can just learn all things SIEM with just these things. And then another thing that's great to learn is I strongly recommend learning Elk Stack as an alternative to Splunk. So if you just Google Elk Stack, you can build this in a virtual machine. You can technically build Elk Stack in a Raspberry Pi. That's a lot more complicated. I've had folks build Elk Stack in a Raspberry Pi, but I would say learn Splunk and Elk Stack, but I would say do Splunk first, because Elk Stack, it uses the same technologies. It uses syslog, and just learn how to do the same thing that Splunk does with the Splunk fundamentals with Elk Stack. And Elk Stack is open source. Splunk is not open source. So I would say that for long-term home use, Elk Stack is better for long-term home use, but Splunk is easier to learn SIEM with. And if you like Splunk, or if you have money and things like that, or if you don't ingest too much data, then Splunk is awesome. Splunk has its benefits, and also a lot of businesses use Splunk. It's a great tool. It's a data science tool. And hopefully that is helpful because, yeah, and this stuff will teach you everything you need to know. Just you do this at home, you'll be ahead of the vast majority of anyone wanting to get into SIEM, period, because most people don't know how to configure these things. They don't know what syslog is, and you just need to Google syslog and see what it is. They don't know how to configure it. They don't know how to forward the logs. They don't know how to collect it. They just know usually at a high level what it is. And then the last thing that I would recommend people learn are regular expressions, which you can go to a website called regex101.com. So if you want to learn SIEM, then the last thing I just recommend learning are regular expressions. So what this is this is just pattern matching. So if I'm saying something like, this is the last thing I'll say, that the dog ran fast. With SIEM, you want to be able to parse data, and search engines like Google have pre-built parsing, but notice if you just learn what some of these characters are, they do different things. So I typed a decimal and everything did this. If I were to change it from a decimal to a decimal with an asterisk, then everything will get highlighted. Or I could say something like /W or /W three. Basically, they're just different ways that you can do this. There we go. There's just so much stuff you can do with this. And you just want to understand what the technology of regular expressions are. So this is not going to be a regular expressions lesson right now, but I'd like to just kind of introduce the technology, I guess, for those who are trying to learn SIEM. And if you know all these things, everything that I said since the question of how, like, what are the technologies to learn SIEM at home, you can do all this with a Raspberry Pi minus Splunk. Elk Stack with the Raspberry Pi is real hard, and Splunk you'll want to have like a normal server or desktop or laptop or something that's not a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi's processor is not compatible with Splunk at this time. So, and that's a lesson you'll learn too. So anyways, I just want to say thank you for everyone who joined. Appreciate you. And we are doing some massive overhauls on our website, so check out our website, notiaPoint.com. Check out our Facebook group for those who are watching from YouTube. Pi'd Hacker Experience is free all day long for those trying to get the Pi'd Hacker Experience prereqs will get you a job. So if you just want an entry-level job, don't pay for some things, get Pi'd Hacker Prereq, save yourself some sanity, get a cert or two if you want to, or don't, and just get a job. And if you're trying to up your game, then we are more focused on those who are trying to be more entrepreneurial, all that good stuff, entrepreneurial. If you're trying to get a raise, come see me. I'll help you make a lot more money. And that's what we charge for nowadays. If you're trying to make money, come pay me some money and I'll teach you how to make a lot of money. So that's my new MO. It keeps things simple for everyone. So, but you just want an entry level job, come to Free Coaching Friday. Get Pi'd Hacker Prereqs. I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you throughout the week, but at least next Friday. So